But Charlie Skelton, award-winning journalist for the London Guardian, wrote this story yesterday. At the G7, we journalists were pampered. At Bilderberg, we're harassed by police. And last night, they got raided. They came into their lodge hotel room, rousted everyone. This is unprecedented. They know exactly who Skelton is. They escorted him off the mountaintop when he first arrived 2 days ago with a police escort in front and back of his car, even though he had a reservation up the mountain. He got back up to his reservation. Again, theguardian.com, Charlie Skelton joins us to talk about this situation. We now have a bright green armored vehicle showing up to menace 10 journalists. We have just squadrons of police stomping around and getting in everyone's face. Charlie has been detained in other countries. He's been stalked, harassed, like the late, great Jim Tucker has been. They tend to really target Skelton because The Guardian is undoubtedly the #1 paper in the UK. And from talking to family that lives in Germany and talking to folks that go to Europe a lot, I've been to Europe, but not that much, The Guardian is the English-speaking paper, and people all speak English in Europe or try to communicate. And so it's kind of the international language. So it's the biggest paper probably in Europe itself. And so this is like them going after a New York Times reporter in New York City. It's very bold. It's very aggressive. It's very dangerous because if they can go after Charlie Skelton, folks, they can go after anybody. And so we either hang together or hang separate. He's a mild-mannered fellow as well. He's a comedy writer, journalist, and actor from Suffolk, England. An Oxford University graduate, he started as a journalist writing features for the Evening Standard and The Guardian. He began reporting on the Bilderberg Group many years ago, and at first kind of thought it was a joke. Very soon, didn't think it was. So he joins us now. He works with his wife as well, getting out some of the hardest reporting out there. So thank you so much for coming on, sir.
Thank you. And can I just compliment you on your amazing-looking studio?
Well, thank you. You know, so the Guardian coverage has gone to the front of the paper website. It's in the physical paper. This has got to really upset the Bilderberg Group. Tell us what happened to you and why you think they're so bold.
Well, I think it's possibly because the juxtaposition of the G7 and Bilderberg this year has meant that there's the policing here is on an extremely heavy scale. I mean, there's a lot of it. It feels to me as heavy as it was back in 2009 in Greece, and you know, it's not as bad as that, but there's still a big police presence, and yeah, I think it has something to do with the gigantic security operation that was the G7.
And for folks that don't know, the G7 just ended, and this is basically a continuation of that.
Yeah, it finished like a couple of days before and about 20 miles away, just across the border in Germany. But, you know, the experience of being a journalist in the two places could not be more extreme. I mean, there we were pampered and primped and helped out in every way imaginable by the government. And here, you know, we're impeded and hindered and harassed by the government. And it's very strange to have gone one from the other. It's like getting out of a hot bath and jumping into an ice bath. You know, it's quite a shock.
Why do you think it's so different, A, and then B, I mean, I know you got the classic British gentlemanly demeanor. When stuff happens to Watson, everyone wants to talk about it, but you got raided last night, so let's talk about what happened to you.
Well, I had ended up with 3 policemen in my hotel room, but they were checking my identification. Now, bear in mind, my identification had been checked twice at 2 separate police checkpoints about 15 minutes before, no more than that. So I was an extremely checked and identified person at this point, but it wasn't good enough. So these 3 policemen in their, you know, fluorescent bibs and their sidearms decided to stand over me for it must have been about a quarter of an hour. This is at 1 in the morning, right, in my hotel room. I got so bored and I was so annoyed. I wanted to say something, but I didn't want to be aggressive. So I just took my trousers and shirt off and stripped down to my pants and said, I'm taking a shower. And went and got into the shower, had a shower, came out in my towel, and they were still in my room, still checking me out, possibly checking me out in my towel, I don't know. But they said, no, I'm sorry, Mr. Skelton, you've got to put your clothes on and come to your car. So I put my clothes on, and the interview continued out at the car, where they searched the car. I don't know quite what they were expecting me to have put in the car somewhere after the...
And they know full well you're writing cover stories for the biggest newspaper in Europe, and they're acting like this.
Well, I did say to them, look, I mean, I know this is annoying for me, but at least you're giving me something to write about. So, I mean, and also I was out there for so long that I decided to just start talking to them about Bilderberg. And I just said, look, I know you're treating me like a criminal right now, but there are actual criminals up in the hotel. You happen to be pointing the wrong way, you guys. You know, there are convicted felons up in the Bilderberg
Kissinger,
conference.
Petraeus, the list goes on and on.
Yeah, and there's an Austrian guy as well who's just been handed out Rene Benko. He's just been handed out a 1-year suspended sentence for bribery. You know, so they knew him, and so they were aware of that. And they started looking a bit embarrassed at that point. And then I just started talking about HSBC. There's a lot of HSBC there this year, and they've literally just a few days ago had to pay £28 million to the Swiss banking authorities for money laundering.
And that's just right over the mountains in Switzerland. That's going on.
Yeah, and in fact, if you look at the list of participants, you'll see that there's a member of a very senior Swiss banking official from Geneva is also one of the attendees. So
we've got the people really basically over the regulations of banking. They're meeting with the HSBC people. I mean, this isn't a conflict of interest.
Yeah, not just that. It's the HSBC's chief legal officer is there, as well as the group chairman and the British Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne.
Who's over banking.
Yeah, exactly. So it couldn't be a more sort of sick little cluster going on for 3 days in private. In absolute private.
This is not your granddaddy's smoky room, as our reporter Jakari Jackson put it. I mean, this looks like something out of a science fiction movie. If folks have seen Dune, the movie with the spaceships on the landing field, the hotel looks like some bizarre science fiction spaceship that's landed, and it's there in the middle of the Alps. It's just a bizarre scene.
It does look like it's about to sort of retract its wheels and take off into the skies. But yeah, it's a strange place, and there's, you know, when you think about the amount of money being spent by the state on policing this and on essentially stopping reporting happening, and things like there's a I know you've reported on one radar mast. I know there's also a military radar station which we found out about a couple of months ago, just again down from the hotel. So there's a lot of military here. There's a lot of state police, but all of this money they're putting into it, all of that money, they just can't find a line in their budget for a press centre and some proper accreditation, like the G7 does. You know.
Well, I mean, what about England? I mean, the police were so nice. We had 3,500 people there. You helped put on the whole event. It was a huge success. We exposed it. The media said, yeah, it's a criminal lobbying group. I mean, what's the difference between the UK police, who aren't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, compared to the Austrian police?
Well, clearly the decision had been made in the UK, and I think also in Denmark the year after, to liaise with the press and with protesters and to enable their actions. So in both cases of Copenhagen and Watford, we were given a hand by, you know, I'm not being an apologist for when the police do bad things, of course, but in those two instances, it did seem like the police were working to help us both cover the conferences.
Well, I had the police tell me, I had the state, federal, and locals all tell me they don't like Bilderberg.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember hearing that in Citrus in 2010. The head of the police, some people were arrested up crawling through the bushes, taken to the head of the police, and he just went, yeah, look, I'm with you guys. So, I mean, you get a lot of sympathy from people, but, you know, the Bavarian police aren't seeming to be the most sympathetic at the moment.
Yeah, no, it's the famous cliche, and it's a cliche because it's true. A certain percentage of the Germanic folks love authority, and all they know is it's the big evil hotel with the bigwigs there, and they're going to grovel to it. We'll be back. Stay there. I want to learn what you think's on the agenda that we haven't learned yet, who may be on the list and not on the list. Charlie Skelton from The Guardian, raided at 1 a.m., drug out in his underwear, and he's calmly taking it. So report. Charlie, you know, they come into your place, they take you back out to the car. I mean, this is really outrageous in a Western country. It's what I'd expect to hear from